Nobody had laughed in the Galactic Prosperity Council's chambers for 6,000 years. So when the human diplomat chuckled softly while reading the tribute document, every alien in the room froze. Ambassador Riva of the Solorian Collective had delivered tribute demands to 47 species during her career. She had seen fear. She had seen tears. She had seen desperate bargaining. She had never seen amusement. Director Samuel Webb of Earth's Galactic Affairs Office finished reading the document. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He folded the paper neatly and placed it on the table between them. 30% of our rare minerals, he said. 5 million humans for labor colonies, exclusive rights to our medical research. Correct, Riva said. Her 4 eyes studied the human carefully. The Council offers protection and trade access in return. This is generous. I see. You have 30 standard cycles to comply. Your species should feel honored. The Council rarely extends membership so quickly. Webb nodded slowly. May I ask a question? Of course. What happens if we refuse? Riva's neck feathers rose in surprise. No species had ever asked that question. They understood the answer without asking. The Council controlled 80% of known space. Their war fleets numbered in the millions. Refusal meant destruction. Why would you refuse? She asked. Every species benefits from Council membership. I did not say we would refuse. I asked what happens if we do. Riva felt uncomfortable. This was not how the conversation was supposed to go. Humans should be grateful. They should be celebrating their good fortune. Instead, this man sat across from her like he was negotiating the price of grain. The Council does not accept refusal, she said carefully. No species has ever refused. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. Webb smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had expected exactly this response. We will need time to consult with our government, he said. 30 cycles, you said. Correct. Then we will give you our answer in 30 cycles. Riva left Earth that evening. She reported to High Arbiter Thesson that the humans would comply. They had asked strange questions, but all species were strange at first. They would learn their place soon enough. She did not mention the laugh. She did not mention the smile. She told herself these things did not matter. On Earth, Samuel Webb called an emergency meeting of the Global Coalition. Leaders from every nation attended. He displayed the tribute demand on the main screen and watched their faces as they read it. They want our people as slaves, the Brazilian Prime Minister said. They wrapped it in nice words, but that is what labor colonies means. They want our future, the Chinese president added. Medical research rights means they own everything we discover, forever. They want our planet, Webb said. 30% of rare minerals means they drain us dry within a century. We become dependent on them for everything. So we refuse, the American president said. If we refuse alone, they destroy us. Their fleet is larger than anything we can build in 100 years. Then what do we do? Webb had spent his entire career studying conflict. He had written books about wars, revolutions, and resistance movements. He understood one thing that most people forgot. Power was not about weapons. Power was about belief. The Council believed they were invincible. Tributary species believed resistance was impossible. That shared belief held the entire system together. Destroy the belief, and the system would collapse. We have 30 cycles, Webb said. We use them. For what? To remind the galaxy of something they have forgotten. The leaders looked at him with confusion, but Webb had already started making plans. He contacted Earth's best hackers. He reached out to non-council species that humanity had quietly befriended over the past decade. He gathered historians who understood how empires fell. News of the tribute demand spread across Earth. People reacted with anger, not fear. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting against masters. They had overthrown kings, defeated empires, and torn down every system that tried to own them. They would not bow to alien overlords. The council expected submission. They would receive something else entirely. Riva returned to the council capital and resumed her duties. She processed tribute payments from a dozen species that cycle. She reviewed compliance reports. She attended ceremonial functions where council members celebrated their endless prosperity. She did not think about Earth again until day 29, when strange reports began arriving. Non-council species were making unusual communications. Encrypted messages were flying between worlds that normally never spoke to each other. Something was happening in the galaxy's quiet corners. Riva brought her concerns to High Arbiter Thesson. He dismissed them with a wave of his ancient hand. Minor species chatter among themselves constantly, he said. It means nothing. Tomorrow, the humans will deliver their tribute agreement and everything will continue as it always has. Riva wanted to believe him, but she remembered that laugh. She remembered that smile. And somewhere deep in her four-chambered heart, she felt the first cold touch of doubt. Tomorrow would not go as planned. She was certain of it. Thesson had lived for 900 years. He had watched species rise and fall. He had overseen the collection of tribute from worlds that no longer existed. He believed he understood the universe completely. He was wrong. The High Arbiter sat alone in his private chamber, reviewing humanity's file on a holographic display. The Council had been watching Earth for 2 centuries, gathering information, waiting for the right moment to approach. That moment had come when humanity finally unified their world government. Divided species were dangerous. United species could be controlled. Thesson studied the images of human history. Their wars fascinated him. They had killed each other over land, over religion, over the color of their skin. They had built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They had nearly used them. Violent, he muttered, primitive, emotional. These were the words the Council used for species like humanity. Deathworlders, some called them, creatures from harsh planets who survived through aggression rather than cooperation. The galaxy had seen many such species. They always submitted eventually. Their violence made them dangerous to each other, not to the Council. Thesson moved to another section of the file. This part troubled him, though he would never admit it. Revolutions. Humans had overthrown their masters repeatedly throughout their history. Kings, emperors, dictators, corporations. Every power structure that tried to control humanity eventually faced resistance. Sometimes the resistance failed. Sometimes it took generations, but it never stopped. The Council had ruled for 40,000 years because they understood one principle: break the spirit before breaking the body. Tributary species accepted their place because they believed. Resistance was impossible. They saw the Council's power and surrendered hope. Thesson had never met a species that did not surrender hope eventually. He closed the file and walked to his window. The Council Capital Station stretched below him, a massive structure that housed 12 species and served as the heart of galactic civilization. Thousands of ships docked here daily. Billions of credits flowed through its markets. Power radiated from this place like heat from a star. How could humans threaten any of this? A chime announced a visitor. Thesson granted entry, and Counselor Ven of the Ventari Collective glided into the room. The Ventari were an ancient species, older even than Thesson's people. They saw patterns that others missed. "You seem concerned," Ven observed. "I am reviewing the human file." "Ah, the deathworlders. They ask strange questions. They do not react as expected." Ven's membrane flickered with amusement, perhaps because they are not like other species. All species are the same when facing true power. "Are they?" Ven moved to the window beside Thesson. "I have studied human broadcasts extensively. They have a concept called revolution that appears in almost every culture they have produced. They celebrate those who resist authority. They build monuments to rebels. They teach their children that obedience to unjust power is shameful." "Words," Thesson said. "Meaningless words. When our fleets appear in their sky, they will comply." Perhaps, but I noticed something else in their history. What? They have never lost a war of resistance. Not permanently. They have lost battles. They have lost generations. But every occupation of human territory has eventually ended. Every empire that claimed human subjects has eventually fallen. Thesson turned to face the Ventari directly. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that we may have miscalculated. Humans do not respond to displays of power the way other species do. Showing them our strength might not produce submission. It might produce the opposite. You think they will resist? I think they have never done anything else. Thesson considered this. He had overseen tribute collection for 3 centuries. He had seen species beg, weep, bargain, and ultimately accept. He had never seen genuine resistance. The last species to truly resist the Council had been erased from existence 8,000 years ago. Even if they resist, he said finally, what can they do? They have no fleet. They have no allies of significance. They are one world against 12 species and countless tributary planets. That is true, Ven agreed. But I have been monitoring unusual communications over the past 20 cycles. Non-council species are talking to each other with increased frequency. The messages are encrypted using methods we cannot break. Minor species always gossip. This is different. The communication patterns suggest coordination. Someone is organizing them. Thesson felt a flicker of unease. He suppressed it immediately. Tomorrow, the humans will deliver their tribute agreement. This conversation will be forgotten. You will see. Ven's membrane flickered again. I hope you are right, High Arbiter, but I have learned to pay attention when patterns change, and the patterns are changing. The Ventari left without another word. Thesson stood alone at his window, watching ships come and go, watching the endless flow of commerce and power that defined council space. He thought about revolutions. He thought about monuments to rebels. He thought about a species that had never stopped resisting, not once in their entire bloody history. For the first time in 300 years, Thesson felt uncertain. He dismissed the feeling. Tomorrow would prove him right. It had to. The message traveled faster than light, bouncing between relay stations that the Council did not know existed. It reached a small moon orbiting a gas giant in an unremarkable system. There, a gathering was taking place. 17 species had sent representatives. None of them belonged to the Council. All of them paid tribute. Samuel Webb appeared on the central display, his image slightly distorted by distance, but his words perfectly clear. Thank you for coming, he said. You all received our invitation. You all know what we are proposing. An insectoid representative clicked its mandibles. You are proposing suicide. The Council has destroyed species for less than this conversation. The Council has destroyed isolated species, Webb corrected. Species that stood alone, that is why we are not standing alone. A gaseous being pulsed with colored light. What can humanity offer? You have no fleet. You have no weapons that threaten Council stations. You are newcomers to the galaxy. We offer something more valuable than weapons. We offer truth. Webb touched a control, and data began flowing to every representative in the gathering. Numbers, charts, records, thousands of years of carefully hidden information. This is the Council's tribute history, Webb explained. Every payment made by every species for the past 10,000 years. We obtained it from Council systems over the past 20 cycles. The insectoid representative made a sound of disbelief. Council systems are impenetrable. They were. Humanity has spent considerable effort penetrating them. How? Webb smiled. We are very good at finding ways into places we are not supposed to be. It is a human specialty. The data continued flowing. Representatives studied it with growing shock, the gaseous being pulsed rapidly. These numbers cannot be correct. We pay tribute for protection and trade access. The Council provides services in return. Look closer, Webb said. Calculate what you pay versus what you receive. The council extracts an average of 40% more value than they provide. Your tribute does not pay for protection. Your tribute pays for their luxury. You are funding your own subjugation. Silence fell over the gathering. Representatives examined the data. They ran their own calculations. They compared notes with each other. The insectoid spoke first. This changes nothing. Even if the tribute is unfair, we cannot resist. The Council's military power is absolute. Is it? Webb brought up another display. This is the location of every Council shipyard, supply depot, and military installation. We have mapped their entire infrastructure. Impossible. Difficult, not impossible. Humans are patient when we need to be. A crystalline being chimed softly. Why share this with us? What does humanity want? We want partners, not subjects, not masters, partners. The Council will never allow it. The Council's power depends on one thing, your belief that resistance is hopeless. That belief is a lie. They are not invincible. They are not all-powerful. They are 12 species who have convinced the galaxy that cooperation is impossible. Webb leaned forward, his image growing larger on the display. Tomorrow I will address the Council directly. I will broadcast truth to every world in their space. When I am finished, trillions of beings will know what you now know. The question is simple. When those trillions look for alternatives, will you stand with humanity, or will you stand alone? The gathering debated through the night. Some representatives argued that the risk was too great. The Council had destroyed species before. They would do it again. But others pointed to the data. They pointed to the military maps. They pointed to something they had not felt in generations, hope. By morning, 17 species had agreed. They would wait for Webb's broadcast. If he succeeded in breaking the Council's illusion of invincibility, they would announce their refusal together. If he failed, they would deny everything and pray for mercy. Webb ended the transmission and turned to his team. 20 humans sat in a cramped room in Geneva, surrounded by computers and communication equipment. They had worked without sleep for 30 cycles, hacking systems, gathering data, building alliances. Will it work? Asked Dr. Amara Okonkwo, his lead strategist. I do not know, Webb admitted. We are betting everything on one moment, one broadcast, one sentence. What sentence? Webb told her. She stared at him for a long moment, then began to laugh. That is either brilliant or insane. Possibly both. And if it fails, then humanity joins the long list of species the Council has erased. But I do not think it will fail. Why not? Webb looked at the screens surrounding them, showing feeds from across the galaxy. Ships moving, messages flying, a universe holding its breath. Because the Council has never faced a species like us. They have never faced a species that refuses to stay conquered. Tomorrow, they will learn what that means. He stood and gathered his things. The Council's ceremonial chamber awaited, one man against 12 ancient species. But he was not really alone. 17 species waited in silence. Billions of humans waited on Earth, and the truth waited to be spoken. Tomorrow would change everything. 12 banners hung from the ceiling of the Grand Assembly Chamber. Each one represented a Council species. Each one had hung there for thousands of years. Together, they symbolized power that had never been challenged. Today, they would witness something new. Samuel Webb walked through the massive doors alone. No guards accompanied him. No aides carried documents. He wore a simple gray suit and carried nothing but a small data chip in his pocket. Thousands of beings filled the observation galleries. Representatives from tributary species had traveled from across the galaxy to witness humanity's submission. This was tradition. New species knelt before the Council. Everyone watched. Everyone remembered their place. High Arbiter Thesson sat at the center of the Council's curved platform. The 12 species surrounded him in order of seniority, their forms ranging from gaseous clouds to crystalline structures to beings that hurt human eyes to observe directly. Approach, Thesson commanded. Webb walked forward. His footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. He stopped at the designated spot, a circle of gold embedded in the floor where countless species had stood before him. Director Samuel Webb of Earth, Thesson announced. You have been given 30 cycles to consider the Council's generous offer. You stand before us now to deliver your response. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ focused on the lone human. Before I respond, Webb said, may I address the assembly directly? Thesson tilted his ancient head. This was unusual but not forbidden. Let the human speak, he thought. Let him explain why his species was grateful. Let him provide entertainment before submitting. You may speak, Thesson said. Thank you. Webb turned to face the galleries, not the council. I address not the council, but the watching worlds, the tributary species, the billions who labor under council protection. Murmurs rippled through the galleries. This was not proper protocol. Continue, Thesson said, curious despite himself. 30 cycles ago, the council offered humanity membership. They demanded tribute in exchange for protection and trade access. We were told this was generous. We were told every species benefits from council membership. Webb paused, his hand moved to his pocket. We spent those 30 cycles investigating that claim. What we found was illuminating. He removed the data chip and held it up. It was small, barely visible from the galleries. This contains 40,000 years of council financial records, tribute payments from every species, expenses for every service provided, the complete economic history of council rule. Thesson straightened in his seat. Those records are classified. They were classified, Webb agreed. They are now public. He inserted the chip into a port on the gold circle beneath his feet. The entire chamber's communication system activated. Holographic displays appeared throughout the galleries. The council's financial history began scrolling. Before trillions of watching eyes. Stop this, Thesson ordered. Guards moved toward Webb. Their weapons rose, but when they tried to fire, nothing happened. Their targeting systems showed only errors. Human technicians have been studying council systems for 30 cycles, Webb said calmly. We found vulnerabilities, many vulnerabilities. The guards tried again. Again, nothing. They moved to physically restrain Webb, but he had already finished. The data was broadcasting. Every world in council space was receiving it. Look at the numbers, Webb called out to the galleries. Calculate what your species pays. Calculate what you receive. You will find a gap. Every species pays more than they receive. Every species subsidizes council luxury while their own worlds struggle. Thesson slammed his hand on his platform. This is lies, fabrication, human propaganda. The data comes from your own systems. I invite any species to verify it. Match it against your own records. You will find it accurate. The galleries erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Some studied the data with growing horror. Others tried to access their homeworld communications. The council's carefully managed ceremony had collapsed into confusion. Webb stood at the center of it all, calm and patient. You cannot stop the broadcast, he told the council. You cannot erase what trillions now see. You cannot put this truth back in its box. Thesson stared at the human with something he had not felt in centuries: fear. What do you want? He demanded. Webb smiled. It was the same smile Ambassador Riva had seen 30 cycles ago, the smile of someone who held cards the council could not see. I want to finish my address, he said. Then I will give you our answer to your tribute demand. The chamber gradually quieted. The broadcast continued, but attention returned to the lone human standing on the gold circle. Continue, Thesson said. He had no other choice. Webb nodded and turned back to the galleries. Billions watched. History waited. I have one more thing to say, Webb announced. One sentence. It is the only answer humanity will ever give to demands for tribute. He drew a deep breath. The galaxy held its breath with him. Webb looked at the galleries filled with tributary species. He looked at the broadcast indicators showing his image reaching every connected world. He looked at the council members staring at him with mixtures of anger and fear. Then he spoke. "We will not pay tribute, and we invite every species watching to join us in refusing." For 3 heartbeats, absolute silence filled the chamber. The words hung in the air like smoke. Simple words, 20 words, but they carried the weight of 40,000 years of submission crashing to an end. Thesson rose from his seat. "You cannot." The communication channels exploded. Messages flooded in from across the galaxy. Species that had paid tribute for millennia suddenly found their voice. The insectoid Krath announced their refusal. The gaseous Melori withdrew their delegations from Council space. The crystalline Vor declared independence after 8,000 years of subjugation. And then the 17. The species that had met with Webb in secret revealed themselves. 17 refusals arrived simultaneously, coordinated to the second. Their message was simple. They stood with humanity. More followed, 20 species, 30, 50. The council watched in horror as their empire crumbled in real time. Representatives in the galleries were receiving instructions from homeworlds. Some rushed to leave. Others stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. "Stop," Thesson shouted. "We order you to stop." Nobody listened. The council had ruled through belief in their power. That belief was dying, and nothing they said could restore it. Webb remained on the gold circle, watching the chaos unfold. He felt no joy. This was not a victory to celebrate. It was a necessary destruction. Ambassador Riva pushed through the crowd to reach him. Her 4 eyes were wide with something that might have been terror or wonder. "How did you know this would work?" she demanded. "How could you know?" "I studied your history," Webb said. "Every empire that rules through fear eventually faces a choice. They can allow challenge and risk losing control, or they can crush challenge and prove they deserve to be feared. Your council chose crushing for 40,000 years. That means trillions of beings across your space have lived in fear. They hate you. They have always hated you. They just needed permission to say it." Permission? Someone had to go first. Someone had to prove that refusal was possible. Humanity volunteered. Riva looked at the chaos surrounding them. "You have doomed your species. The council will retaliate." "Will they?" "Look at your leaders, Ambassador. They have never faced true resistance. Their military is designed to intimidate weak targets, not fight coordinated opposition. Right now, they are receiving reports that we have shared the locations of all their military installations with every species in the galaxy. If they attack anyone, everyone will know exactly where to strike back." Thesson heard this. He turned to face Webb with fury in his ancient eyes. "You would destroy galactic civilization to avoid paying tribute." "No," Webb said. "I would end galactic slavery to give civilization a chance to actually exist. What you built was not civilization. It was exploitation wearing a mask. We brought order, we brought peace. You brought submission. That is not the same thing." Counselor Ven of the Ventari floated forward. Unlike Thesson, the Ventari showed no anger. There was something almost like respect in the patterns of light flowing through their form. "You planned this from the beginning," Ven said. "From the moment you received our demand." "Before that," Webb admitted. "We began planning when we first detected your scouts observing Earth. We knew you would come eventually. We knew what you would demand. We spent decades preparing." "Preparing to destroy us?" "Preparing to give the galaxy a choice. That is all we did today. We showed everyone the truth and offered an alternative. What happens next is up to them." The communication channels continued flooding with refusals. The number passed 100 species, then 200. Worlds that had never spoken to each other were suddenly coordinating. Alliances were forming in real time. Thesson watched his life's work collapse. He had ruled for 3 centuries. He had believed his power was eternal. Now he saw the truth. Power built on fear could survive anything except hope. And humanity had just given the galaxy hope. "What do you want?" Thesson asked again. His voice was quieter now, defeated. "Nothing you can give," Webb said. "We want what your council can never provide. We want a galaxy where no species kneels to another, where trade is fair and protection is mutual, where the strong help the weak instead of exploiting them." "That is naive. Such a galaxy cannot exist." "Perhaps, but humans have a long history of building things that cannot exist. We call them dreams, and we are very stubborn about making them real." Webb turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Nobody tried to stop him. The guards stood motionless, their weapons still useless. The council sat in shocked silence. At the door, Webb paused and looked back. "One sentence," he said. "That is all it took. Not weapons, not fleets, not violence, just truth spoken loudly enough for everyone to hear." He walked out into a galaxy that would never be the same. Behind him, the 12 banners of the council still hung from the ceiling. But they no longer meant what they once had. 3 standard years had passed since the day humanity spoke one sentence. The galaxy was unrecognizable. Thesson sat alone in a small dwelling on a quiet world far from council space. He had been removed from power within days of Webb's broadcast. The council itself had dissolved within months, its member species scattering to negotiate their own positions in the new order. He spent his days watching broadcasts from across the galaxy. Old habits died hard. Today, he was watching a ceremony. The Cooperative Union was celebrating its 2nd anniversary. 247 species had joined. They gathered not as masters and servants, but as equals with shared purpose. The human woman speaking at the ceremony looked familiar. Thesson searched his memory and recognized her as Dr. Amara Okonkwo, now serving as the Union's first rotating chair. She spoke about cooperation, mutual defense, and fair trade. She spoke about the principles humanity had offered the galaxy. No species pays tribute to another, ever. That was the Union's founding principle. Simple words, revolutionary words. Thesson had once believed such an arrangement was impossible. Species were selfish. They sought advantage over each other. Only strong central authority could maintain order. But the Union was proving him wrong. Species that had never trusted each other were now trading freely. Defensive pacts protected the weak from the strong. Disputes were resolved through negotiation rather than force. It was messy, it was chaotic. It was nothing like the ordered hierarchy the council had maintained. And yet it worked. A knock at his door interrupted his viewing. Thesson rose slowly. His age weighed on him more heavily these days. The stress of his downfall had accelerated his decline. He opened the door and froze. Samuel Webb stood before him. The human looked older than Thesson remembered. Gray had spread through his hair. Lines had deepened around his eyes, but he still carried himself with that same quiet confidence that had unsettled Ambassador Riva all those years ago. "May I come in?" Webb asked. Thesson considered refusing, but curiosity won over pride. He stepped aside. Webb entered and looked around the simple dwelling. No servants, no luxury, nothing remained of the High Arbiter's former grandeur. "I expected guards," Webb said. "Assassination attempts." "The galaxy has forgotten me," Thesson replied. "I am no longer worth killing." "I have not forgotten you." "Is that why you came, to gloat?" Webb shook his head. He sat down without being invited, another breach of protocol that Thesson no longer had the power to punish. "I came to understand," Webb said. "I have studied your council for most of my life. I know how you operated, I know what you built, but I never understood why. Why we demanded tribute. Why you believed it was right. You were not monsters. Your council brought stability to a chaotic galaxy. You prevented wars that might have killed trillions. There must have been something you told yourselves to justify the cost." Thesson was silent for a long moment. No one had asked him this question. Everyone assumed they knew his motivations: greed, power, cruelty. "We believed we were necessary," he finally said. "Younger species were violent and foolish. They would destroy each other without guidance, Tribute was the price of survival. And who decided which species needed guidance? We did, the founders, the oldest and wisest. That was your error. Webb leaned forward. You assumed wisdom came from age. You assumed strength gave you the right to decide, but wisdom is not knowing what is best for others. Wisdom is understanding that you cannot know. Easy words from the victor. Perhaps, but humanity learned them through suffering. We once believed we could guide lesser peoples. We called them primitive. We took their resources for their own good. We destroyed their cultures to save their souls. Webb's voice grew heavy. We learned that we were wrong. It took centuries and oceans of blood, but we learned. Thesson studied the human. You think we could have learned too? I think you never had the chance. Your council succeeded too completely. You never experienced the consequences of your arrogance. You never saw your empire from the perspective of those beneath it. And now we do. Webb nodded. Now you do. They sat in silence. Outside, a transport hummed past, carrying goods between worlds that no longer paid tribute to anyone. The Union will fail, Thesson said. Eventually, cooperation always gives way to competition. Someone will rise to dominate the rest. Perhaps, Webb agreed. Humans have a saying, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. We know our system is fragile. We know it requires constant effort to maintain. But we believe the effort is worthwhile. Why? Webb stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the ordinary street, the ordinary buildings, the ordinary beings going about ordinary lives. Because everyone deserves the chance to build their own future, not the future we choose for them. Their own. That is what tribute denied. That is what your council took away, and that is what one sentence restored. He turned back to Thesson. Goodbye, High Arbiter. I hope you find peace in your remaining years. I hope you come to understand what you cost the galaxy. And I hope, perhaps, you find something worth building in this new age. Webb left without waiting for a response. Thesson returned to his broadcasts. The ceremony was ending. 247 species stood together, united not by fear but by choice. One sentence had changed everything. And for the first time in his ancient life, Thesson wondered if maybe, just maybe, that change was for the better. The galaxy would never know for certain. But it finally had the freedom to find out.